There, what's up? So I'm back again with another video in SSO series, and today we'll see what is the difference between SSO and federated identity. You have heard this in my previous videos, these terms, and if you'll Google SSO and federated identity, these are two different things. So just to not get confused, I thought to make this video so that we can get a clarity on what is the difference between SSO and federated identity. Many times, due to confusion or due to lack of knowledge, we interchangeably use these words as sometimes for federated identity SSO or sometimes for SSO federated identity. So let's understand what is SSO and what is federated identity and what is the difference between them. So authentication protocol are set of instructions which are used to communicate authenticated data between two entities. Authentication protocols are used to authenticate users of two types of access, SSO and with federated identity. Now, what is SSO? In centralized authentication, a user is given a single login credential, username and password or token, etc., to access multiple applications or services within the same enterprise. This is usually termed as single sign-on. And this is an approach to maintain a centralized database which provides single identity for every user in the organization. For example, you log into your Gmail account and that provides you access to Google Drives, YouTube, etc. without having to actually provide login credential at every other Google related application. So this is about SSO. This is for centralized authentication for multiple products. Now let's understand what is federated identity. In federated authentication, a user uses its credential to access multiple applications or services across different enterprises. So in SSO, it is for single enterprise only. Single enterprise, multiple applications. But if you want to go outside the organization and access multiple products, then you have to use federated identity. This is usually termed as federated identity management, where multiple domains have a trust relationship that allows users to be authenticated across IT infrastructure. For example, you can use your Google account to log into other websites. Among some of the well-known authentication protocols used today are OpenID Connect and SAML. This protocol takes the data or credentials entered by the user and validates them against the credentials managed by the user's identity providers. The key difference between SSO and federated and FIM, which is federated identity management, is while SSO is designed to authenticate a single credential across various systems within an organization, FIM is a system to offer single access to multiple products across various enterprises. SSO is a function of FIM. Having SSO in place won't necessarily allow for federated identity management. That said, both tools are crucial in supporting organizations with both securing their data and minimizing obstacle in user experience. Now we will see the workflow. So in for SSO, as we know, user accesses external service providers, and then service provider identifies the user and sends authentication request to identity provider. Then user logs into identity provider if needed. And at last, identity provider builds XML response containing user authentication info, sign it and send it back to the service provider. Service provider validates the response. How federated identity works. So in this case, user browse or other application engage in an authentication dialog with identity provider in the same domain, providing attributes values associated with their identity. Some attributes associated with an identity, such as allowable roles, may be provided by an administrator in the same domain. A service provider in a remote domain that the user wants to access obtain identity information, authentication information, and associated attributes from the identity provider in the source domain. Service provider opens session with remote users and enforces access control restrictions based on user identity and attributes. All these diagrams are copied from internet, and if you want to know more on it, you just pause the video and try to see the workflow. This is another example of federated identity. Now in this case of federated identity, user authenticates from the identity provider, and after which a user accesses the service which is provided by the service provider. There is a trusted relationship between service provider and identity provider in this case. So that's a small difference and introduction about the difference. And if you want to know more, do like the videos and subscribe the channel. If this video is helpful, please write in the comment box. And if you have any question, you can write in the comment box that as well. Okay, so today we learned the difference between SSO and Federated Identity Management, which is also called FIM, SSO and FIM. So thank you viewers for watching this channel.